In a global landscape defined by structural volatility, we have entered what experts call the age of competition. With geo-economic confrontation identified as a severe short-term risk and the geopolitical risk index reaching record highs this March, the need for strategic stability has never been more urgent. Today, as part of B Universe, Jakarta Globe presents a premier platform for high-level discussion on the intricate economic, social, and political ties between Indonesia and its strategic partners. As we navigate an era of cascading shocks and market volatility, our goal is to move beyond transactional exchange toward true strategic alignment. Welcome to Jakarta Globe Insight, building stronger partnerships for a shared global impact.
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome our moderator today, editorial board member of B Universe, Mr. Anthony Wonsono. And also, I would like to welcome our honorary speakers today. His Excellency Sergei Tolchenov, Ambassador of Russian Federation to Indonesia. The next one, His Excellency Mr. Raman Ramanouski, Ambassador of Belarus to Indonesia. And please welcome Mr. Iman Pambagyo, Ambassador of Indonesia to the WTO 2014-2015, Directorate General of International Trade Negotiations 2012, 2014, 2016 and 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, and our moderator, Mr. Anthony Wonsono, editorial board of B Universe, the floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we face a world that is increasingly volatile, increasingly fragmented, and increasingly polarizing. The global landscape in 2026 is defined by heightened uncertainty, structural volatility, and accelerating geopolitical realignments. The World Economic Forum's Global Risks Report 2026 describes the current era as an age of competition, where geopolitical, economic, environmental, and technological risks increasingly intersect and reinforce one another. We live in an era where geopolitics and economics can no longer be separated. Conflict affects energy. Sanctions affect trade. Technology affects sovereignty. And instability in one region can very quickly become economic uncertainty in another. The Asia-Pacific region, home to more than 1/3 of the world's population and generating close to half of global GDP, has emerged as a critical anchor of global economic stability. Yet, its size does not insulate it from external shocks, nor is the status quo a guarantee for the future. Global risk, sentiment, commodity price fluctuations, and geopolitical tensions can quickly reverberate across Asia-Pacific economies. In this environment, strategic partnerships and bilateral relationships matter more than ever. They are no longer merely about diplomacy. They are tangible. They are about resilience, market access, supply chains, food security, energy security. and long-term national positioning. That is why today's discussion is both timely and important for us. We will be exploring how Indonesia should position itself in an age of competition, how cooperation with partners such as Russia and Belarus may evolve, and how all of this fits into a wider global trade and geopolitical architecture. To help us unpack these questions, we are joined by three distinguished speakers. Allow me to introduce them one by one. His Excellency, Mr. Sergei Gennadievich Tolchenov, Ambassador of the Russian Federation to Indonesia, His Excellency, Dr. Raman Ramanouski, Ambassador of the Republic of Belarus, Indonesia, and Mr. Iman Pambagyo, Director General of the Ministry of Trade for International Trade Negotiations and former ambassador to the World Trade Organization, amongst many other postings. Once again, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to our distinguished speakers for joining us this morning as we discuss these issues. Allow me to kick things off with an opening question for all of you. In a world that is becoming more fragmented, more volatile, and frankly, more transactional, how can countries build national resilience, particularly economic resilience, against external shocks and disruptions? Perhaps, Your Excellency, would you like to kick us off?
Yes, thank you very much, Anthony. So I'll try. I believe so. The answer is easy to answer, but very difficult to implement. Of course, to ensure resilience of national economy of every country, you should combine your development of your national economy and cooperation with the rest of the world, with foreign partners, with strategic partners. Because I believe so in the modern world, in current global environment, it's not possible to any country to ensure its energy or food security, as you mentioned, on your own. So it's in quite many cases, it's a result of cooperation with foreign partners. And in this case, I believe that bilateral ties between the Republic of Indonesia and the Russian Federation could contribute to ensuring energy and food security of the Republic of Indonesia, because my country, the Russian Federation, is a responsible and sustainable provider of energy resources and of a lot of kind of food products. And we are ready to cooperate with Indonesia in quite many fields. Hopefully, since last year, strategic partnership between Russia and Indonesia has been adopted by our leaders, by President Prabowo Subianto and President Vladimir Putin last June in St. Petersburg. And it means that our cooperation is really comprehensive. It's not only about politics, not only about strategic security and multilateral issues, but it's also about economic cooperation in quite many fields. And just to prove it, I can mention the outcomes of the latest visit of President Prabowo Subianto to Moscow that just has happened, well, 2 weeks ago, when topic of cooperation in oil and gas, in energy in general, was one of the most important, and it has been announced that we get some practical outcomes, and it means that somehow oil and gas from Russia will be here in the Indonesian market, and we will contribute to ensuring security and the energy security of your country. And this is also proves that in the modern world, when tensions in one small region well, maybe not that small, but for example, in the Middle East or in Persian Gulf, can influence and bring negative impacts to situation in quite many countries, quite sometimes distant from Middle East, like Indonesia. And in this case, cooperation, international cooperation, bilateral or multilateral, has a very big importance, and that's why we believe and we proceed in my country that we should also create a favorable environment for such cooperation. So it means in the modern world, it should be no any unilateral sanctions, no any restrictions for global trade, global cooperation, because otherwise it should be no way to increase bilateral trade, technological transfers, or any kind of cooperation. So maybe this is like a general answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. Selamat pagi, warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to start my speech by thanking, first of all, the organizers of this important discussion today for this invitation and the possibility to share more information about my country, Belarus, and about the prospects of developing relations between Belarus and Indonesia, but also to share some insights on the development of these relations in a more general context. You mentioned the global uncertainties, age of competition. I believe that we never left this age of competition. Of course, it always happened, it always used to be like that, but it just became more evident for everybody. And for Belarus, the answer to these challenges is very simple, is to enlarge the circle of friends, to develop cooperation with our friends and partners like Indonesia, also to develop interregional cooperation between the regional structures like Eurasian Economic Union and Indonesia and ASEAN in general. Of course, I believe that we need to, of course, live in a world that is free from sanctions, undue restrictions on our trade. We need to find ways to develop cooperation in the interest of our countries, to support the national development in our countries. And Belarus can offer a lot to Indonesia in terms of food security, for example. We are a big supplier of fertilizers, potassium fertilizers, but we can also offer compound fertilizers and solutions tailored to the Indonesian needs for cultivation of different crops, or palm oil or rice. And we can also support the food security by offering agricultural machinery that produces Belarus, like tractors, harvesters, other equipment. In terms of national development, of course, I think that cooperation in the area of education is very important, and upgrading the human capital, developing human capital. And I think that cooperation between universities and if more Indonesian students would come to both Russia and Belarus, this would increase the human bond between our countries, and our economies would speak the same language. So I think that the response to these challenges, to current disruptions, is to increase our friendship, to strengthen our friendship, to increase the exchanges between the governments of our countries, between the business communities of our countries, and people-to-people contacts as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Iman?
Thank you, Pak Anton. and thank you for having me in this distinguished panelists. Ambassador Sergei Tolchenov, Ambassador Raman Ramanouski. I think the Pak Anton posed a very generic questions about how we see the world trade operates today. I did some reality checks, and I will share my notes here. WTO is largely still intact, right? Secretariat still functioning. Members' commitments are still legally binding. But major powers increasingly bypass disciplines. Security exceptions are being stretched. Retaliation politics rising. And unfortunately, some other members of the WTO follow suit. So the system is not collapsing procedurally, but it is being politically outgrown by its own members. We saw that there is no breakthrough at the WTO Ministerial Conference in Yaoundé, Cameroon, last month, but WTO stays as a baseline legality, default rule books, if you like, and reference architectures. Because if you negotiate a trade agreement with other countries and other regions, the reference point would be WTO agreements. Rules still exist, but belief in the rules is fading. The system shifted from being the engine of liberalization to be the constitutional floor of global trade. So WTO is still relevant, but I think the basic nature of WTO need to be revisited. So the keywords for everyone, I believe, including Indonesia, Russia, and Belarus, will be diversification. Diversification in terms of economic partners, development partners, in terms of products to be exported, in terms of source of imports, source of foreign direct investment, because business in general would like to see the three keywords to be pursued by any governments: stability, continuity, and predictability. Of course, it will be a great challenge now how to proceed with these three words. But if you see in the past, efficiency is the buzzwords. Now it has to be combined with resilience. The future international trade will be much more costly, but that's the fact as the geopolitics enter into the geoeconomics discussion.
Thank you. So moving on to a more specific targeted discussion. If I may start with Ambassador Tolchenov. Some pundits, some analysts say that the changing global order today, the changing geopolitical, economic, global architecture that we have seen over the last few decades, frankly, is actually a blessing in disguise for other major powers around the world. That there are new opportunities even as we face increased frontal competition and rivalry. So in light of, do you concur with that statement? Do you think that's valid? And also, in this new order, in this changing global dynamic, where do you see Indonesia's role in that global order, especially in terms of its strategic location geographically, its large population, and its function in Asia Pacific and Southeast Asia?
Well, I completely agree that now the existing, that world order that exists before and is changing, and I hope and we are working for bring this world to the new shape, what is called multipolar world order. And I believe so not only Russia, but our colleagues from Belarus and quite many other countries that previously called developing countries, but now we prefer to call it global south. Countries from global south are working in this direction. and we would like to really to shape up a new world order that will be more democratic, more efficient, and that will do not let any single country to dictate the rest of the world how to do and what to do, and give us new possibilities to cooperation. And I believe that some new, relatively new organizations and groups like BRICS, for example, this is what big players in this world like Russia, India, China, and other BRICS members would like to establish. It's not something against the West, but it's just a group of like-minded countries, non-Western countries, that would like to create environment favorable for their development, for their cooperation. And I hope, and this is in the agenda of BRICS, to establish a separate and independent structures for economic cooperation, for financial cooperation, even for financial exchanges. Because at this moment, the current world depend on, for example, on SWIFT to transfer money. And for example, I can share with all of you that for our bilateral relations between Russia and Indonesia, the situation when we cannot directly transfer money from my country to Indonesia because American banks do not let it. So this is a real challenge, and we would like to find out some other channels to solve this situation. And if in the framework of BRICS or in the framework of any other multilateral organizations, we will manage to find out how to do it, how to establish a system of financial transactions, of financial settlements do not depend on the West, it will be very important, because now my country and Belarus, we are under the sanctions from the US, EU, and other Western countries. But who knows, maybe next year Indonesia will be the subject of such sanctions, or any other country. So this is also a very important issue, I believe, and we need to find out some solutions for this situation. And more generally, we believe that to create a new architecture of multilateral security and cooperation, it's very important. And I hope Mr. Raman let me steal the show, but I will mention that our countries, Russia and Belarus, we have an initiative to establish here in the continent called Eurasia, it means Europe plus Asia, a new architecture of multipolar security and cooperation, taking into consideration all the diversity of our countries, European and Asian. And if our partners from Eurasia join us, I hope we will manage to create a kind of network of different organizations, including BRICS, including ASEAN, including Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SAARC, and quite many others, GCC, and establish new rules for cooperation and peaceful coexistence of our countries. So, thank you.
Mr. Ambassador from Belarus, if I may ask, we mentioned a little bit about Eurasia, right? Looking ahead, how should Indonesia think or perceive Belarus within the broader Eurasian economic and strategic landscape? Do we see Belarus more as an individual bilateral economic partner, or perhaps as a gateway or as a doorway into the broader Eurasian Economic Union?
Thank you very much for your question. Indeed, we see ourselves as a gateway to the Eurasian Economic Union. Last year, during the chairmanship of Belarus in the Eurasian Economic Union, we made a major achievement. The Free Trade Area Agreement between Indonesia and the EAEU was signed, and we are looking forward to the swift ratification process of this agreement and to the speedy entry into force of this agreement, which will open up many opportunities for business cooperation, because the tariffs will significantly decrease or just be zero on over 90% of categories of products. So it will open opportunities for both Belarusian businesses and Indonesian businessmen to enter Belarus as a gateway. And we consider Indonesia in our turn as a strategic partner in the region of Southeast Asia. And also we would like to increase our economic cooperation with Indonesia. And I believe that the potential is still untapped for this cooperation. And coming back to commenting on what my colleague, His Excellency, Ambassador of the Russian Federation said, I can just concur that Belarus and Indonesia share the same vision of a more inclusive global order based on mutual respect, free from intimidation, sanctions, and pressure. In the recent years, we look more and more at the countries of the global south, and we see a special role and position of Indonesia in the region. 2 years ago, we joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and became partner of BRICS. And I believe that now we have even more venues, more possibilities for dialogue, for cooperation, which is developing very well between Belarus and Indonesia. At the highest level, we are thankful for the visit of His Excellency Prabowo Subianto, President of Indonesia, to Belarus last year. There were contacts on the level of leaders at other venues, and I believe this is a very good foundation for our future cooperation.
Thank you.
Sorry, Anthony, can I maybe add a little bit? Mr. Roman, if I'm not mistaken, the lower house of Belarusian parliament already ratified this free trade agreement with Indonesia.
Yes, it went already in the first reading through the lower chamber of the Belarusian parliament. So the process is going on.
So this is also very important because, yes, the FTA have been signed last year, in last December, but of course, I believe so businessmen understand that it should be implemented when it should be, an implementation of this FTA should be started when it will be ratified by all the 6 participants, 5 member states of EU and Indonesia. So Belarus is the first one who made this step. Russian government already sent this document of ratification also to the lower chamber of Russian parliament. So I hope if Indonesia also will join this process and do it timely, and if by the end of this year we will manage to ratify this document, so it will mean that really 90% of all goods from EU member states and from Indonesia will be free of any tariffs, and I hope it will make a very important impact in to the development of our bilateral trade and maybe investment also.
Thank you. Well, that's a perfect segue to Pa Iman. Indonesia has over 20 free trade agreements, preferential trade agreements, economic partnership agreements, and a lot of it came from you and when you were in office. Yet there are some sentiment within the business community that perhaps it is not maximized or utilized to its full extent. I know you have also lamented that in the past, right? And the gentleman, Mr. Ambassadors here, have also stated that especially this new latest EAEU trade agreement is being processed by all relevant countries. So my question for you is, how can we optimize these stronger and build these stronger partnerships, especially for trade and economic partnerships, with all of our agreements signed amid especially these global uncertainties?
Well, basically, it takes two to tango, right? It is true that many of our FTA or SEPA framework has not been utilized. I think it is time for Indonesia to make up our mind how to convey to the business, in particular in Indonesia, the way they could utilize this agreement, because it offers a lower tariff, lower barrier of non-tariff, and so on and so forth. So I think it is the homework of the government and the business association in Indonesia to introduce this more to our business sectors. I tend to believe that the FTA between Indonesia and Eurasian Economic Union is a breakthrough, in a sense that we try to diversify our partners, not to focus or depends heavily on conventional partners, so to speak. And in that regards, I think that will be the way for Indonesia to open the Pacific corridors. Is it the only way to trade through this Middle East corridor for trade on oils, for example, gas, fertilizer, agricultural products, two ways trade between Indonesia and the world, because we are yet to maximize the Pacific corridors. We have the Vladivostok, for example. We can capitalize on that, right? And when I talk about the Pacific corridor, it will include Canada, the US, you go down there, Panama, Mexico, Venezuela, Argentina, and so forth. And they produce oils as well, right? So in the other parts of the Pacific, we have this Japan, Korea, of course, in the north, we have this border with Russia, and we can connect Russia and Belarus. So the potential is there. So I think we have a good number of FTA or closer economic partnership agreement. It is time for, in particular, Indonesia to optimize those agreements. Right? So it is good to know that the agreement with Eurasian Economic Union has been ratified. I hope Jakarta could also expedite the ratification of the agreement so we can start working on that.
Thank you. Before we move on, just we have a few more questions left from myself, but a reminder to all those attending that we're receiving questions from the floor as well. There's a QR code that will be shown by the team. You guys can scan it and submit your questions through that, and we'll review it together. Moving forward, Mr. Ambassador Tolchenov, we know that the ties between Russia and Indonesia have been deepening. President Prabowo has visited Russia multiple times in his time in office, 3 times last year, and of course, 1 time in the last 2 weeks, as you said. There are many things discussed: energy, agriculture, technology transfers, etc. We've discussed also that trade relationships and agreements are not necessarily seen on the ground. How can we, or how do you view both countries being able to solidify, make these high-level talks more concrete? And how can we, and what should we see over the next 2-3 years as these partnerships develop, as these projects kick off?
Well, of course, I agree completely with you, Anthony, that we should implement and we should bring these outcomes of high-level talks into practical projects, into practical programs of cooperation, into some real events and economic investment projects here. And I would like to say that we're trying to be very operational, and I hope that just in coming weeks we will have some more delegations from Russia to come to Indonesia to discuss practically those things that our two leaders has been discussed when it comes to technological transfer, to energy cooperation, to high technologies. And also both Russia and Belarus, we have such a very operational mechanism like joint commissions for trade, economic and technical cooperation. And with my country, we expect to have such next session of this joint commission next month, and in Russia, in the city of Kazan. And it will be a very good opportunity, not only for ministries, agencies, and governmental bodies to discuss the issue of cooperation in many fields, in trade, investments, and even beyond this, in education, technology, and innovations. But also a good opportunity for business people to meet each other, to discuss specific issues and maybe specific projects. And I'm also very glad that for last maybe 2 years, a lot of delegations from Russia coming to Indonesia. It's not only governmental bodies, but also companies and companies of different size, big players, middle-sized companies, and SME. And they are looking for partners in Indonesia. And embassy and trade mission of the Russian Federation in Jakarta, we're trying to organize a lot of contacts, business matchings here in Jakarta, and trying to find appropriate solutions and maybe to find out ways to engage into some specific projects of cooperation. So this is just maybe beginning of this process, but I hope so maybe by the end of this month or next year we will have more what I sometimes call success stories here, and we can tell it not about only high-level visits and president's talks, but about some practical results, maybe some Russian goods on the shelves of Indonesian supermarkets, or more Indonesian goods in Russia and Belarus and in EAEU member states. So this is what we are trying to do, what we are working on, and I hope that finally, but together, of course, with Indonesian colleagues and friends, we will manage to get it.
Thank you. Mr. Ambassador Ramanov, for many that might not have a deep background in Belarus and its economic development, what do you think are practical, commercially viable opportunities for partnership and trade between Belarus and Indonesia that you see or that your government has highlighted? Maybe something that the forum and our readers and viewers can look into down the road.
First of all, I would like to say that there are many opportunities. There are some existing areas of and well-established areas of cooperation, but there are many prospective future areas of cooperation that we need to explore by common efforts. For example, Indonesian farmers know very well Belarusian fertilizers. And this area remains a strategic sector in our bilateral cooperation. And we are ready to continue in this field. But also we can look into opportunities for agricultural machinery. We are ready for joint production of tractors, harvesters, agricultural equipment, which will allow to mechanize the agriculture in Indonesia to increase its efficiency. And this will work for achieving the main goal that is set by the President of Indonesia to achieve food security and food self-sufficiency of Indonesia. We are ready to offer a number of agricultural products, like dairy products. This is our strength area for Belarus. We are supplying already milk, skimmed milk, and we are working on the access of Belarusian enterprises to the Indonesian market in this area. And I think it will also allow Indonesia to achieve the goal of free nutritious meals program, which is very important for the government of Indonesia. And there are many other areas like in the field of petrochemical industry or production of equipment for mining sector and for example, smart cities solutions for traffic, for electric buses, and for the construction of housing. And there are many opportunities that we can explore, and it will be beneficial for both sides. It will help Indonesia to implement its national development programs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may ask a follow-up question specifically to you as well, I think your economic relationship with the Russian Federation over these years has been very deep and has been an important aspect of your economic growth. Whereas, especially compared to Indonesia, how do you view your experience, and what can Indonesia take away and learn from that experience, and what can we expect by working with partners in the Russian Federation for economic development down the road? Something that, of course, we're all looking forward to.
Indeed, Belarus has very deep and close relationship with our friends and partners in the Russian Federation. We have even union state of Belarus and Russia. It's a structure that is a very high level of integration between the two countries. It means that the economies of Belarus and Russia are very closely intertwined. There are no borders. Our citizens can freely travel between the countries, have equal opportunities for trade and also for job opportunities. And we have very close relations on the level of regions between Belarus and the Russian regions. So there is a lot of experience, and I would say that this is quite unique. I'm not aware of other examples in the world of such close and high-level cooperation between our two countries. So we can share a lot, and we can share how to build trust between countries, between nations, starting from the highest level to the governments and the people on the level of people-to-people contacts. And I think the more we cooperate, the more there are contacts and exchanges between our countries, the better we understand each other, the smoother will be cooperation in various areas in business, for example.
Thank you. And to Pa Iman, if I may ask a final question before we go back to the floor. If you were advising Indonesian policymakers today, some of whom may be sitting on the floor, what would be your single most important recommendation for navigating a world where economics and geopolitics are so inseparable to the extent that economic issues are even being weaponized, perhaps, in the landscape that we face today?
Well, Anthony, I think some keywords there. First, of course, build resilience, architecture, focusing on stability, certainty, and predictability. Align the trade policy with industrial policies. Build in collaboration with the business sector, data and early warning system. So it is not about following the existing plan. We have to anticipate the unthinkable. So we have to have this early warning system, then coalition with like-minded countries, the coalition of the willing, I should say, and of course, discipline in the execution of the policies. I think talking about Russia and Belarus, I think the potential is huge there. What is needed now is the more conversation between Indonesia, Russia, and Belarus. In the context of ASEAN, of course, we have this ASEAN Eurasian Economic Union conversation, I think coordinated by Cambodia. We have this institutions framework, but how to put more meat in this conversation? Just to emphasize, we have a lot of conversation, but it is time for us to look into the real impact of this conversation, looking at the possibilities. I think agriculture will be one area. Food security. I think if you talk about these sanctions being imposed by other countries or group of countries, there's still areas where we can, engage in a better way. Right? I think food security is not part of this sanction. Other cooperation, financing, including local currency payment system, perhaps, digital custom, B2B platform scaling, trade facilitation, of course. Those are areas where Indonesia and our partners in Eurasian Economic Union can work on. So it is time for us to open our mind. Of course, the traditional markets such as Europe, US, China, still important. We have to keep that way, but we have to expand this in the context of diversification. So perhaps that would be my advice to the government of Indonesia.
Thank you. Please.
If I may just add a few remarks to what my distinguished colleague has said. You mentioned the interesting word, the coalition of the willing. Indeed, our cooperation is based on our will to develop friendship, to develop close ties. And this brings us back to the beginning of our conversation. And the Ambassador of Russia mentioned the Charter of Diversity and Multipolarity in the 21st century, the joint initiative by Belarus and Russia to set not the rules, but set some principles for cooperation in the new world that we will follow jointly. And of course, we would be very glad if our Indonesian friends could join this initiative. But anyway, we will develop cooperation based on mutual trust and on mutual interest, of course. And to put some more meat in this cooperation, we have structures. We have also Intergovernmental Commission on Trade and Economic and Technical Cooperation. We're looking forward also to the next meeting of this commission in Belarus. And we are planning, and we are ready to discuss concrete projects and concrete areas of cooperation to make sure that this cooperation is interesting for both sides, and it will open more opportunities for the Indonesian business people. And we invite, of course, all Indonesians to come to Belarus. You don't need a visa. It's visa-free. So please come to Belarus and look for yourself. It's better to see one time than to hear 100 times like today. But I think the more we have cooperation, more contacts, it will increase the awareness of our societies about the opportunities that lie ahead. Thank you.
Anton, I think nobody knows about this, but there is a cooperation between Indonesia and Belarus in terms of Halal standard. I think it was in 2023 that we mutually recognized the Halal standard of the two countries. So that's a good basis.
Yes, indeed. In 2024, we signed the agreement with Indonesia on the mutual recognition of halal certificates. It means that products from Belarus can enter the Indonesian market, and the Indonesian consumers can buy it without any concern. And this was a major achievement, and I think that this is just another incentive for cooperation in the food sector between our countries.
Wonderful. Thank you very much once again, everybody. We'll move on to our question and answer from the floor. The first question from Fitria Miftasani from BRIN. Indonesia has plans to build a nuclear power plant or a power reactor to address uncertainty in energy scarcity. According to the speakers, what is the biggest challenge Indonesia will face in this plan? Is nuclear power plants becoming a right step to solve domestic energy problems? Feel free.
Well, the short answer will be yes. I do believe that really the future of energy development in Indonesia, it's nuclear. Well, of course, partially, not 100%, but because this is a reliable source of energy, and if Indonesia will use proven technologies like those that Russia can provide to, it will be a long-term solution for Indonesia. It will ensure its energy security, and we can ensure that the price will lower than, for example, using diesel stations or any other kind of stations, and the price will not depend on any kind of fossil fuel, like it happened now when there are some problems in the Persian Gulf and the Middle East, and the price for oil and gas has rocketed. And according to information that I've got from Russian state corporations for atomic energy, Rosatom, they can ensure that if a nuclear power plant will be constructed here, Rosatom can ensure that the price will be stable for 20 years, because it's not dependent on oil, gas, or anything else. So, and well, we're discussing these issues with Indonesia. I know that Russia is not alone here. There are many proposals from different countries. But what I would like to stress that, first of all, at this moment, Russia is the only country, for example, that use floating NPP with SMR, small modular reactors. We've got such a station for 6 years already in operation. We try to introduce such technologies to Indonesia and ready to bring such technologies to your country, where we've got so small, many islands, and it's easier to bring such floating NPP to the shores and to build a big NPP. And also one important thing that I would like to stress about my country and Rosatom, that we are providing to our partners only proven technologies that we use in our territory. It's not something that are only blueprints or just ideas or schemes. This is that we use in the territory of the Russian Federation, and which is also under construction in quite many other countries like China, India, Bangladesh, Turkey, Egypt. So if Indonesia will join this list of our partners, I believe it will be beneficial for your country, for your people. But, and I believe that people from BRIN know it. The problem is here, because there are still no final decisions, still no decree of the president putting nuclear energy in the energy mix of Indonesia. So when the decision will be taken, I hope Rosatom will be one of the first who will be ready to start practical negotiations with, I don't know, with BRIN, with ESDM, with PLN, PTPLN, about construction of a nuclear power plant.
Thank you. The next,
If I may,
sure.
If I may just add a few words. Well, I would say that Belarus is just an example of this cooperation with the Russian Federation in the nuclear field, because we several years ago built the first nuclear plant in Belarus, and now it accounts for some 40% of all electricity produced in the country. So nuclear energy, first, it's diversification of energy sources. Second, it's about efficiency, decreasing costs and making them predictable for a long period of time. Third, it's about environmental impact and decreasing the greenhouse gas emissions, and Belarus managed to decrease significantly these emissions and to even achieve the goals ahead of the schedule. And we have experience of building nuclear power plant for the first time in our history, and we are ready to share it with our Indonesian partners and friends. Of course, for Belarus, it was not an easy decision because of our experience. We suffered a lot from the accident at Chernobyl power plant 40 years ago, but we accumulated a lot of experience in overcoming the consequences of this accident. And now the time has proven that the decision to build this power plant is very right, is very rational, very reasonable, because it allows and it increases our energy security.
Thank you. I think we have time for two more questions. The next one will be from Ria, if you can go back to that question. Yeah. Given the current global landscape, how can businesses ensure that trade between Indonesia and Belarus and Indonesia-Russia remains smooth and compliant with international regulations? Now, I think the key here is international regulations, and I think the bigger question is how relevant are those rules-based playbooks that the world has followed over the past few decades? If major countries are ignoring them flat out or disregarding them, how relevant should they continue to be down the road as we engage in partnerships and economic relationships with new blocs or deeper blocs? Perhaps, Iman, you can give us some insight on that.
Yeah, thank you, Anton. Very interesting question. I think we will continue to take the WTO agreements as the rule books. There should be some reference. We cannot just out of the blue setting the basis for our business with other countries, right? So the keywords would be variable geometry. When something can work well based on the WTO discipline and agreements, move on, like facilitation, custom procedures, those kind of things. But of course, again, under this spirit of this variable geometry approach, we need to look into the areas where there's commonality to proceed with the cooperation. I think what our president does recently, visiting some countries, is part of this variable geometry strategy or approach rather. Diversify our relations, diversify our partners, and see which will work to meet the basic interests of Indonesia and our partners. So perhaps it is rather confusing for some to see Indonesia's approach to many countries, visiting particular countries in Europe and then going to Russia, meeting President Putin, and so on and so forth. So, and Japan, right? So I think it is part of the approach that Indonesia is taking, variable geometry. Which one will work, and we will go for that.
Okay, thank you. Please.
Maybe I can also join some ideas to your answer, Pakiman. So I don't think that bilateral trade of Indonesia with Belarus or Russia breaks any international rules, because all of us, we are following those decisions and regulations that have been adopted in the framework of WTO. But the problems here could be, and this is dependent on the decision of the government of Indonesia and Indonesian business, what they will do if any single country will try to apply its own rules that could harm our bilateral relations. Unilateral sanctions, any restrictions measures. So it seems to me that for last maybe 3-4 years, people here were a little bit afraid to doing business with my country, for example, just because they understand that they could be subject of secondary or primary sanctions from the West. So, but this is a question to you, to business people. Are you brave enough to continue doing business with those countries like Russia, Belarus, Iran, maybe, or anyone else? Or you will thinking about your business with the US, with the Western world? So we are open. We are ready to have contacts with any country, but it depends on our partners also.
Thank you.
Indeed, what you mentioned about the restrictions and unilateral coercive measures or sanctions, it is totally true, because they are not based on the international law. And this is just unilateral instrument which is used for political purposes, be it to knock out competitors or to get some gains in trade or in politics, to influence the internal politics in some countries. And of course, this has nothing to do with international law. When it comes to cooperation between our countries, of course, we need to follow the international law, as I said, and the business people need to look at the opportunities for cooperation and to find the way to cooperate based on the international law and on their interest. This is how I think we should go. And like Ambassador of Russia said, we need to go forward and to explore the opportunities, because our countries, they follow the international law, and we are fully adherent to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that. It is also puzzling for me to see the threat being weaponized, right? If one particular country has issue with other countries, and this country will expect that its trade partner will adopt also the foreign policy of, imposing some barrier to other countries, which is, I think the exporting policies to other countries and impose that. If we not follow that instruction, then we got the sanction as well. So it is, to me, sorry my word, ridiculous, right? Because at the end of the day, each country would like to develop their economy, provide all the necessity for their people, and can we just do it apart from other political interests of other countries? So competition is there, and we need to manage this competition in a good way. And again, WTO is still relevant. We are not seeing the globalization. What we are seeing is re-globalization or reprogramming of globalization. Now we have partners in Eurasian Economic Union as part of our effort to diversify our partners. So I share the concerns there. Why one particular country should impose their foreign policy on others? I think this is something that need to be addressed. But again, let's be realistic. That's the world we live in now. Again, I think the keyword will be variable geometry. Let's move on in areas where we have no problem at all, including the third countries, and see how we can further enhance the multilateral trading system in the context of current situation.
Thank you. With that, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Allow me to summarize a bit of our conversation. We've gained a lot of insights today, this morning. There's a few things that we should highlight. The first is we agree that all nations, all countries want what's best for its own national economic development. As the world continues to change, as geopolitical, geoeconomic tensions continue to shape our bilateral relationships, our trading preferences, we see that diversification is a critical element in how we shape our relationships moving forward. Diversification in trading partners, diversification in economic relationships, diversification even in geographical trading routes, perhaps. We've seen the possibilities of the Pacific Corridor, and we see that if we look beyond the 1, 2, 3 traditional economic partners, we see that the opportunities really are boundless, right? The opportunities that Indonesia has, or the opportunities that our neighboring countries have to explore economic opportunities with a range and variety of new partners are abundant, right? And for us, it's important to continue expanding our circle of friends, and it is important for us to continue keep an open mind. And although, as Your Excellency mentioned, it is easier said than done, it is still an important first step. These high-level meetings, these engagements, these trade agreements are critical steps to building decades-long economic partnerships and relationships. But the key, of course, is continuous engagement, guidance for us to monitor and allow for deeper conversations and deeper relationships to be built pragmatically, practically, and on a concrete level. And we certainly hope that this forum, Jakarta Globe, as a forum, as a platform, can continue to build on those relationships, particularly with our trading partners and economic partners, both old and new. And with that, I would like to thank everyone here as well for joining us. We thank you for your time and your attention. And once again, Mr. Ambassadors, Pa Iman, thank you very much for your insights today.
Please give round of applause for this Jakarta Globe Insights first edition. Thank you so much, Pa Anthony Wonsono. And to the honorary speakers and moderator, please kindly stand aside at the stage to receive our token of appreciation. So for that, we would like to invite Ibu Aprevita Wulansari, the Managing Director of The Universe, and Bapak Jaka Susila as the Editor-in-Chief of Investor Daily and InvestorDaily.id to present token of appreciation for our speakers today. Let's proceed to take a picture together. Gentlemen and Ibu. So on my cue, 1, 2, 3. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Once again, give round of applause for our amazing and distinguished speakers. Thank you so much. Once again, I would like to extend my gratitude to Mr. Anthony Wonsono, Mr. Ambassadors, and Mr. Iman Pambagyo. You may return to your seat.